Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto Anime episode review. This one's going to be for episode 30, which is called Sharingan versus the Lightning Blade Kiba the Fang. And yeah, this was a really good episode. Definitely the best, like more or less the best fights we've seen up to now in the Boruto anime. And yeah, the focus on this one was primarily on Sarada against, I think the girl's name was Buntan, who is like Raiga, the previous Seven Ninja Swordsman's daughter. We got a little bit of backstory on her to, I suppose, make the... ultimately it serves to kind of make the victory for Sarada kind of more notable, because it is the daughter of a kind of known character from the past. And I like that they clarified here that, oh wait, if that's her father, then that's the guy from that filler arc where Naruto was in, where he faced this guy. So that was interesting to see that they made that connection, but did it in such a way where it's just like, yeah, he never knew about her and she never knew him as such, so that's the connection there. But the fight itself was really interesting, because obviously it was her primarily using lightning style jutsu and then the swords enhancing the power, whereas for Sarada it was kind of her first time really using her Sharingan in like full on combat, and getting to see some of the like original kind of uses of the Sharingan, which kind of it fell away in the original Naruto series, of just like, the idea of like, okay, you come the end of the series, Sasuke was fighting people that had such unique abilities, he couldn't necessarily just copy their moves with the Sharingan, so they had to more focus on the more really heavily powerful aspects of the Sharingan. But going back to these more basic versions of just like, it gives you that really good like kinetic vision and like the ability to like really quickly dodge attacks and see through stuff very clearly. Focusing on the genjutsu aspect of it, which played a huge role in Sarada's victory here. And then I suppose most importantly the copycat section, which is the one that I suppose come the end of the series got used the least, but it's always been a cool thing, and seeing Sarada do that to her was such a unique part of the fight, to see just her doing all the lightning style and it just be this complete just evenly matched thing that they're both doing the same jutsu. That's when her opponent obviously uses the swords to power it up. And the end of the fight I thought was really interesting, how they set it up, that like Sarada eventually became aware of kind of just what the kind of lightning shark in the water is doing, and then kind of created this genjutsu so that more or less it would hide just what was happening in the air around them, and it would look like it's still pretty clear. But Sarada was aware that basically the water was undergoing electrolysis because of the event of electricity going in the fight, and she just throws a bomb down there and ignites it and gets the victory, though she does pass out immediately after kind of saying her kind of like little victory speech, because throughout the fight they played up the dynamic between the two of them, that like her opponent never really knew her father, so she's kind of like suffered because she never knew that, and because the father wasn't around, that affected how the mother kind of treated her, whereas Sarada's trying to say that like I also kind of suffer because I never really knew my father, and that she fundamentally believes that even if maybe parents don't show it all the time, that they always do care in the end. Just really cool that Sarada got this big victory, and like the star fight of this episode. Really great animation on her throughout, seeing her use things like the clone jutsu to kind of get away from the attack, using the different genjutsus. That this was very much like her first Sharingan fight. She didn't really use much of her like Sakura kind of moves of like the really heavy like punches and stuff like that, because it was more of a long distance fight. So I kind of like that this was more of like a Sasuke style or early series style fight, and it was cool to see her go through all that. The other, I suppose, next biggest fight was Shojiro against the, what was it, three characters he was fighting, and seeing him initially seems like he's completely captured by them. He has the needle sword is kind of tying him all up, and they're about to like split him open with the like executioner sword and the the one with the giant mallet as well, the kind of crushing sword. And I loved the way he played this, in that I think it was very predictable how he played, but I thought it was really cool to see Chodro in just this position of pure confidence. In the last episode, it kind of looked like he just has nothing going on here, but just to see him be like, you are over-reliant on your swords. That it's not the sword, it's who's wielding the sword that matters. And just putting all these doubts in their mind about like, oh, you look like I'm completely helpless, I can't even move. Don't miss with that executioner's sword. And then he kind of shows them that like, look, I don't mind hurting myself to dodge your attacks, but you guys are terrified of getting cut. And it really pointed out what even Sarada said to her opponent, of just like, their revolution is fundamentally a childish one. They're trying to bring things back to the way they were before, in that they want to inflict all of this damage and pain and blood and have it go back to this way, but they don't want to suffer any of it themselves. And obviously that's the big difference here, of like, they are just kids in this case. They don't realize the full extent of this, and you could see it by how like terrified they were when the tables turned, and the fact that Chojuro only had a sword and then like only had half a sword, and the idea of like what he could do with that just because of how skilled he was, and how he was willing to take some damage, take the cuts if it meant getting, you know, the victory in the fight. I love that line where he said, you know, like, you have to be willing to get cut to sever bone. Just the idea of like, realistically in a fight between equals, you're going to take some damage, but if you can take some damage and get that strike that deals the massive amount, then that's kind of the way you have to approach things, because you saw how terrified they were anytime he kind of swung at them, and seeing him just completely go through the needle sword girl's attack, and then just, you know, take her out completely with the kind of the handle of his sword, and then how I love how his sword was cut in half, and then how he took out the guy with the executioner's blade by basically like, this is what you were planning to do for me, and here's how I would have done it. You would have been dead, your head sliced in half, if my sword wasn't cut in half before. You have to be willing to do these things. And he scared them so much that he just won the fight there just by itself. So really cool display of his power in terms of just pure sword technique, and just, I suppose, being used to getting hit and still keep going. So really good showcase for, I suppose, one of the Kages who we weren't really sure about in the skills department. So that was a good use. Iwabe got a really cool moment. It was just a quick one, but you saw the guy with the explosive blade like overlooking all the other fights. So he has this plan. You know, the others, he was basically willing to sacrifice them, but he had the plan to defeat them in the end. And then Iwabe just comes in, and you have the sword lock, and you think, oh no, the guy's just going to blow him up with this. But then Iwabe just takes out the bottom bit of his kind of the kind of staff-like thing that he does, and it's the sword, and just, you know, cuts the guy. I thought that was really brilliant to show the difference, and that here's these kind of Mist Village ninja who want to basically start a war, brings things back to the way they were in the past, and they're just... They look down on the Leaf Village ninja because it seems like, oh, they're living the high life in like a really technologically advanced place where they don't have anything harsh in terms of how they're trained. But then Iwabe, I think, here just really showed that, you know, the Leaf Village characters are willing to do what they have to do when they need to, but they can still be nice people fundamentally about doing it. And that's the big distinction. And I suppose what Shojiro is trying to do is more or less get the Mist Village to kind of be more like the Leaf Village, where they can do things in a much more open way, but still keep the skill level up, which we're seeing now in our generation of like, Sarada got the victory here, Iwabe won his fight, and so on. What else do we have? We had Mitsuki, a kind of little recap of the fact that Suigetsu's kind of impressed with Mitsuki for finally learning how to say thank you, and that clearly Boruto, who is Mitsuki's son, kind of symbolic son representing the kind of difference between like coming from a place of darkness and here's the light that Mitsuki will follow. He's going to save him with whatever intel is in this scroll that Suigetsu gave him, and he's heading into the battle, so we'll see that at some point. Not exactly sure what it could be, but we'll see what they do with it for sure. We had a little bit with Boruto and Kagura. Just kind of continuing their fight a little bit. Nothing too much. It was mainly just a setup that they are still in the midst of their fight, and it's bait that's going to be the next episode. There wasn't a ton to talk about in terms of what happened in this specific episode. Just that Shizuma wanted to initially take out Boruto, but then Kagura stepped in and said, no, I'll do it. So, however the turn eventually happens, that's going to be the key thing. And I suppose, depends on how they do it in terms of like Mitsuki. Is he going to allow Boruto to do something, or is he going to fight himself? Because I think the obvious one right now is that Kagura and Boruto will fight while Mitsuki takes on Shizuma. But at the same time, I almost feel like Shizuma has to be taken out by like a combination of Boruto and Kagura, or just Kagura on his own, or maybe just Boruto on his own. So maybe Mitsuki will kind of have that fight, hold him off for a little bit, and then whenever I assume Boruto will be able to snap Kagura out of it, then everything will turn on him, and we'll get a story for him about why exactly he wants to do what he wants to do. But yeah, very impressed with this as like the first, kind of action conclusion starting to come into play for an arc for Boruto. I was very pleased with the Sarada fight, and what they did with the Iwabe fight just had to be this quick thing, no need for it to go on a massive amount of time. Shojiro's fight was great, and they're obviously setting up that Boruto and Kagura are going to have their fight next time out. Mitsuki will probably be in play, and we'll see what other characters they use as well. But yeah, that has been the review for episode 30 of Boruto. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the episode, as well as what I had to say here. If you're wondering why I did this one audio only, by the time I was able to watch the episode and record the video, the lighting where I record wasn't great. I could have, turned on the light on my phone, but it still would have been a pretty dark video, so I just decided this is probably the easiest way to do it, to not distract people with like weird lighting. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.